Hi, this is Ms. Pink, and my friends call me Pink, and I need your help with this next video. I'm going to read the story called The Rose, which is about a young girl and some fairies and a rose. And I want you to, as you listen to this video, and as I'm telling the story, I want you to pick a part of the story that you want to put on paper. And you can use crayons or markers or collage or anything you like to use. And I'm going to put all the pictures into the next video. And I need them all by April 16th, 2022. So if you've ever listened to my stories before, usually there's images that go along with the story. So I want your help to do that. So I hope that you will either email Lauren at the South Londonderry Free Library or myself. And I'll put our email addresses in the description of this video. I look forward to receiving your pictures. Keep pushing play. Today. Hi, this is Ms. Pink, and my friends call me Pink. And thank you for joining me on the story about The Rose, written by Mrs. Sherwood. In 1831, a very, very long time ago. So today in Vermont, it is a gorgeous day, a day that might be followed by a night where this story took place. It is gorgeous in Vermont. The sun is shining and the sun is glistening, and it is just a beautiful day. So this story is about a little girl, some fairies, and a rose. So come with me along the journey of the rose. It happened one night in my younger days that when I went to bed with spirits so airy and gay that I couldn't by no means sleep. So I rose from my bed, and as the moon shone as bright as day, I walked out upon the lawn. It was in the fine month of May, and the soft breeze shook the leaves of the aspen tree which grew beside my cottage. The lawn was covered with dew, and the little flowers had closed their colored cups as they were in sleep. As I walked across the lawn and wandered into the wild wood beyond, there I could see a soft light of the moon no longer, save where here and there admitted through the openings of the trees. And as I proceeded into the wood, the shade became deeper. Yet I heard the sweet voice of a nightingale before me, so I would not turn back, and at length I lost my way and wandered further and further into the wood, until at last I came to an open space, where the light of the moon was seen again through the trees. The turf was so short and so soft to my feet that it felt like velvet. And not far from me, I saw a circle of the same soft grass, bounded by a fence of prickly gorse. "Surely," said I, "this must be a fairy ring." And while I still looked upon it, behold, a light brighter than the moon shone upon the circle, and I heard a sound as it were the silken wings in the air. I withdrew into the bower of the thick-leaved trees to hide myself, and soon I saw a large train of pygmy ladies alight upon the lawn. They were dressed in white velvet robes with borders of precious stones, and their laced head dresses were finer than the finest cobweb. They had stomachers blazing with precious stones, and every seam in their dress was wrought with threads of gold. The first of these ladies was taller than all the rest by at least a tenth part of an inch, and she was wonderfully graceful and dignified in her air. On her head was a crown of diamonds, and the name Gloriana was wrought in pygmy characters upon the band which encircled it. I saw that she had a rose instead of a scepter in her hand. The fairies soon, by their magic art, raised a throne out for their queen, upon which she seated herself with remarkable grace and majesty, while 12 of her maids of honor held a canopy over her head, formed by the expanded cup of the water lily. When the queen was seated, they all cried in one voice, "Long live our queen! Long live great Gloriana!" 3 times they repeated these words, and the queen as many times bowed her head. And when they ceased, she addressed them in a voice so sweet that it was like the music of a harp. "Ladies of the fairyland," said Her Majesty, "this is the night when we, your queen, intended to bestow the never-fading rose on her who has spent the last 12 months in the most profitable manner. Let those who have been most industrious stand before our throne and answer our questions. Those who have been idle, we caution not to be present themselves as candidates for the rose." Now I'm surprised to see that out of 12, out of the number, which could not be less than 200 or 300, 11 came near her throne, and as they approached, they all bent very low before the queen. "Magnifica," said the queen to the first of these, "how have you spent your time since our last annual meeting?" Magnifica bowed her very profoundly before Her Majesty. "I have a very fine garden, please you, noble queen," she answered, "and I spend all my time in teaching fountains to play, in making waterfalls, in raising hills and sinking valleys, in pruning my trees and smoothing my lawns, and my garden is, without question, the finest in fairyland." "Aquilina," asked the queen, "how has your time been employed?" "I have a very large palace," she said. "I have hung with all my tapestries, which I have wrought myself. It is the finest tapestry in fairyland." "Hyacinth," said the great Gloriana, addressing the third fairy, who presented herself before the throne, "how have your hours been employed this last year?" "I have spent my time, most gracious queen," answered she, "in pranking the beautiful race of flowers in fresh liveries. I painted the dainty, bright-eyed, in new colors, the variegated with my tiny pencil the painted cups of the primrose, and infused a deeper bloom into the rose." The queen gently inclined her head, and turning to another fairy, said, "And thou, Mariana?" she asked, "how hast thou employed thyself?" "I have a grotto," said Mariana, "in the deep acclivity of a rock, which no mortal foot shall ever touch, and I dress the grotto with shells which I gather upon the seashore, and the brilliant stones which I pick out of the earth. It is all bright with various colors. I have encircled it with a column of polished crystals and onyx. I have taught the green emerald, the amethyst, and the ruby to assume the shape of flowers, and when the sun visits my grotto, its rays are reflected upon from 10,000 sparkling stones of various colors. My grotto is the wonder of fairyland." "Harmonica," said Her Majesty, "and how hast thou been engaged?" "I have a voice so strong and sweet, great queen," replied she, "that none can listen to me unmoved. All day long I sing. The woods and groves re-echo with my song. In the lone valley I often call to Echo, and listen to her sweet responses. I sing myself to sleep, and salute the morning with a song, and I am called the sweetest singer in fairyland." The queen then addressed herself in the same words to the next. "I love melody," said Scythia, "no less than my sister Harmonica. I touch the chords of my harp with so much skill that no one can rival me in fairyland, and every hour of the day I devote to music." "And how does Cautilina employ herself?" asked the fairy. "Night and day," she said, "I dance. I can dance so lightly that my foot would not discompose a thistledown." Her Majesty then spoke to the solemn and sage Musidora, and required an account of her employments. "In a deep dark cabin, by the light of an ever-burning phosphorus, I pore perpetually over the works of ancient sages," answered she. "No one in thy realms, O Queen, is so skilled in the ancient lore as myself." The Queen then addressed the ninth fairy by the name of Mirza, and asked the same question. Glorious Queen, she answered, I deserve the rose more than these, for I employ my time in training the youthful fairies to every perfection. I teach them to imitate to rich embroidery every flower and every herb. I teach them to sing sweetly, to weave with grace the light dance, and bid to the harp utter sweet strains of melody. My pupils are the most accomplished fairies of our famed country. I, said another fairy, stepping briskly forward, have an imagination wild and fertile as that of the great magician Merlin, and I employ my time in weaving in the web of fancy tales so curiously formed and gay and fascinating that they are delight of all of fairyland. And now the queen addressed a little fairy, who was, as she cast her eyes upon her, drew back. Approach, Rosetta, said the majesty, and tell me how thou hast spent thy time. 12 years, most mighty queen, she answered, have sacredly rolled away since I first beheld the light of the moon, and as yet I know but little, and can do little good. But I have a kind and sage parent, who teaches me that now, in my youthful days, I must seek every means of improvement, and implore from heaven assistance in overcoming every evil and selfish feeling, that when I become older, I may employ the gift of fairyism in doing good and making those about me happy. While Rosetta spoke, the queen smiled, and her smile was bright and gladdening as a ray of light. But how, asked she, does your mother instruct you in the employment of your time? When I was first able, answered Rosetta, to follow my mother through the air, she taught me to bind with tiny bands the broken wings of a hummingbird, to help the loaded bee bear her sweet burden to her cell, to take the fly out of the nest of the spider, and to feed the young birds who had lost their mothers. And now that I have become older, she's promised to take me with her when she visits the humble race of mortals. Then will she teach me by sweet dreams to comfort those who are sad at heart, to fan with cool gills those who labor within the torrid zones, to mix healthy juices with potions for the sick, and to frighten the wicked man from his purpose by fearing fearful omens, and to perform other labors of love as are permitted us. Go, little Rosetta, said the queen. The rose which is destined for thee is now a little bud, which has just appeared in the garden in the royal palace. Sometimes hence it will be a full-blown rose, and then thou, my child, shall wear it, and it shall give thee immortal beauty and never-fading honor. But where is thy mother? As the queen spoke these words, there came from amidst the rest of the fairies a sweet lady of a beautiful countenance. Miranda, said the queen, wherefore didst thou not offer thyself as a candidate for the rose? Most glorious queen, she answered, I am a humble fairy, a little known in fairyland, and my palace is the least adorned of any in the noble kingdom. My time is spent in training my children as far as I am able, to wisdom and knowledge, and I direct them where they may find assistance in the acquirement of virtuous habits. I teach my daughters to love home and to render themselves useful in retirement, rather than to seek admiration. And it is my great desire that they should use the powers which they inherit in doing good to others, rather than pleasing themselves. Yet what I have been able to do, added the fairy, is but little, not worthy to be spoken of, but in obedience to the commands of your majesty. Miranda ceased and bowed, retired a few steps. The queen arose. To the fairy Miranda, she said, we adjudge the prize of industry, and while we do so, she added, looking around her, we would take occasion to point out those of our subjects, the ladies of our court, that industry is never commendable, but when employed with the cause of virtue and as the handmaiden of true wisdom. Miranda, forever wear this immortal rose. It is a brighter adornment than the richest jewel. As she spoke, she fixed the rose on the good fairy's head. I perceived that it gave a luster to her features, which made her far excel in beauty in all the other fairies of her companion. The end. So I wonder what happened to the little girl that got to watch all this. What lessons did she learn? Thank you for listening, and until the next time, keep pushing Pleae.